On October 1st, 1971, Walt Disney World opened in Florida, and on October 1st, 2021, the world will celebrate its 50th anniversary. We thought it would be interesting to go back 50 years and see what the world was saying about Walt Disney World as it was being built. Every month, we're going to revisit news articles from those days and examine the world of 50 years ago compared to what we know today. Welcome to Disney in the Distance. Hi, I'm Daniel.
And I'm Zach.
And welcome back to our channel for a very special new series that we're calling Disney in the Distance. So we're going to spend just a moment here to explain to you kind of what we're doing here. October 1st of 2021 is our target date. That will be the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. So for every month between now and then, we are going to be looking back 50 years ago and reading the newspaper articles at the time and seeing what they have to say about this brand new neighbor in Florida called Walt Disney World.
We're going to then discuss the findings of those articles based on kind of what we know now, but we're not reading ahead, so things will happen in the actual order that they happened, which may lead to some surprising contrasts.
So you may hear us at one point talk about something that you know for a fact already has happened, but we will not necessarily use that foreknowledge to talk about it. We're going to try to take this as it comes, month by month. So, of course, we will talk about things that we know looking back, but we won't talk about decisions that are going to be made. This is really confusing, isn't it? Yes, I know it is, but hopefully this will all make sense as we get into it. Also, we're going to be putting this into a playlist on our YouTube channel called Disney in the Distance. So if this is something that you like and you enjoy, share that playlist with some other people. Help get the word out about this. And if you like this type of video, make sure you give us a big thumbs up to let us know that we're doing the right thing.
This is the first video in what is going to be a long evolving series, and therefore we are open to suggestions in terms of a format, in terms of moving things around, in terms of what you might like to see in particular sorts of stories. So in addition to giving this video a big thumbs up if you like it, please do leave a comment saying what you like, what you don't like, and what we really can do better. I know we say that a lot, but in this case it's really important because this is all new.
Yeah. And it's also really kind of weird for us to pick a starting spot for this series. We have chosen July of 1969 just because something important happened that month in Disney history. And it seemed like a good place to start because that's really when stories start picking up, is around July of 1969. Hey, why don't we just jump right into it and let's talk about the environment that the Walt Disney World Company was facing back in July of 1969. In November of 1966, Walt Disney was diagnosed with lung cancer. He died from circulatory collapse on December 15th of that same year. Although ground had not yet been broken on the Florida project, the Disney Company proceeded with the project after a short restructuring period. In order to alleviate fears that the Disney Company would be directionless, it was declared by the Disney marketing department that there would be no one man to replace Walt. Instead, a group of senior Disney executives would steer the company going forward. Roy Disney, Card Walker, Dick Irving, Don Tatum, Bill Walsh, and Walt's son-in-law, Ron Miller. The July 1st, 1969 article, Disney Legacy Prospers Sans Walt, expounded upon the company's success under this new leadership at the time. Launching in Chicago later in the year would be the start of the Disney Arena shows called Disney on Parade. And the new movie, The Love Bug, had a projected gross profit of more than $10 million, making it the best-performing Disney movie in almost a decade. The 53rd major attraction was a month away from opening at Disneyland. The new Haunted Mansion attraction cost $6.5 million to construct, a little more than one-third of the original cost of opening day Disneyland, which had 22 attractions. In Florida, the construction of Walt Disney World was right on schedule. So, as you heard from there, Walt Disney died in December of 1966. An important side note here is the groundbreaking for Walt Disney World was actually May 30th of 1967. So Walt Disney never actually participated in any of the events of building Walt Disney World.
And it is his death specifically that led to not necessarily power struggles, but anytime the major visionary of a company dies, you've got umpteen competing ideas about the direction the company should take.
Over the years, I've heard it said before that, that this was a big gamble, that Walt Disney World was a big gamble for the Disney company to take. And I don't think that's actually what they meant, because based off of all the evidence at the time, everyone knew this was going to be a really big, successful theme park. The state of Florida was building new roadways to go in here. You had airports that were expanding. There's numerous articles I can point to that will tell you, that they're expecting 8 to 10 million guests the first year, and then that number would continue to go up. So no one thought that this was going to be a bad idea, even without Walt at the helm. But I think that little saying comes from the fact that what was happening was that Walt Disney Company, the stockholders were like, wait, we just lost your visionary. Like Apple losing Steve Jobs. It's like, who's going to be the new guy? Who's going to be the new Walt? And unlike Apple, who appointed a single guy, I think Walt Disney did a really smart job. The company, not the person, did a really smart thing
Came
of
back
saying
from the grave just to do this.
Of saying, no, there will be no one to replace Walt. Walt is still here with us. His presence is still here with us. No one can replace Walt Disney. Instead, we've got these 8 executive leaders that Walt has groomed over the years that will make decisions for the company. And so it kind of alleviated those fears of, oh my gosh, the man with the vision has left. What will we do? It also subtly changed the project, the Florida project, because Walt really wanted to build Epcot. He really wanted to build a progress city in Epcot. And once he died, people didn't have enough vision. He hadn't put down enough of it on paper for them to really understand what it was that he wanted to build. And that's where some of the internal power struggles came from. And it kind of delayed the project a little bit. But what they decided was, there was always supposed to be a theme park element to this Epcot, to this Florida project. We know how to do that. Let's build this theme park and let's go forward with it.
And now we have a giant golf ball.
One of the things also that kind of reassured the public and everything was building the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion at Disneyland was the first major attraction that was built after Walt Disney had died, and he actually had no final input on that attraction. It was the first attraction that was built, under the direction of these 6 people running the company.
That being said, there were, like we mentioned before, there were clashes about the direction of the Haunted Mansion because Walt wasn't there to put his foot down and say, no, this is the way we will do it.
Yeah. They spent $6.5 million building the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, which is almost a third of the cost of Disneyland itself. Disneyland only cost them $17 million, which was 22 attractions on opening day. So they spent a significant portion of money, a huge amount of money at the time, to build this attraction because they needed to get it right. And I think the success of that attraction went a long way to really kind of alleviating a lot of people's fear about the direction that Walt Disney Parks was going to go. The other fun fact that we've dug that wasn't in the voiceover is that a young Imagineer named, I don't know if he was young, he might not have been young, an Imagineer named Yale Gracie perfected the projection technique onto sculptures, which you see all throughout the Haunted Mansion. You see it in Madame Leota, the ghost in the graveyard, the busts in the graveyard, the singing bust, the little tour guide at the end of the Haunted Mansion. That technique was perfected by this man named Yale Gracie, and as you may know, the ghost host name is
Master Gracie.
There you go.
It's actually called, or at least it was referred to, as the Leota effect.
Yeah. So there you go. If you ever wondered where Gracie Manor and Master Gracie came from, now you know. It was Yale Gracie, an Imagineer that worked for Disney.
I want to find out how old or young he was at the time.
We will have to put that as a little side note to do in our Don't Ask Alexa. And as you heard from the voiceover, the other things that were happening to show that Disney was truly in control were, The Love Bug was out in the movie theaters. It was their first movie to make gross profits of more than $10 million.
Big money.
They might actually make themselves into a little movie studio there. They're small little scrappy movie studio that made a $10 million film called The Love Bug.
Hashtag small indie company.
Also, it's fun to know the Love Bug was really the first live action movie that they made that wasn't that was kind of directed at the teen market. That they Card Walker was really big on like, well, this is an untapped market. We need to go for the teenage market, and started to do that. And then the films that followed that, the Apple Dumpling Gang and whatnot. I'm getting ahead of myself. I shouldn't bring these up, but that was a kind of a little pivotal thing right there. Also, the Disney Arena shows that never really went anywhere.
I've never heard of them.
Disney on Parade. I know that the Ice Capades had always done Disney on Ice, and that still continues to this day. But yeah, Disney on Parade was kind of like a traveling circus show that had mixtures of things. I would love to get some footage from it. If you know where we can find any footage from Disney on Parade from the 60s or early 70s, please let us know so that I can, get that for you to show. Well, I guess if you had it, then I wouldn't be showing it for you. I'd be showing it for never mind. That's not important. Is there anything else we want to talk about here? This is July of 1969. It's also important to note that the Apollo 11 project happened in July of 1969. We landed on the moon. We brought back some moon rocks. Things happened. That was great. At this point in time, remember that there were billions of dollars being poured into the space program, which was taking place in Cape Kennedy at the time, which is now changed back to Cape Canaveral, but not that far from from Disney World in Central Florida, the area that they were at. So a lot of attention was focused on Central Florida at this particular point in time.
By a lot of attention, I don't think you'll ever get viewership figures this high again. 20% of the world's population watched Aldrin and Armstrong walk on the moon.
Yeah, it was a big thing. It was crazy. Just reading through the papers back then at the time, it was a crazy thing. Also, we learned about this secret Russian probe that was going to come out you've never heard of before. Oh my God, go Google that. It's amazing.
That is because it was Russian secret.
What was it called? I don't even remember now. I'll put it right here. Go Google it. It's amazing. There's a secret Russian probe that interfered with our moon landing. But hey, let's move on with Disney in the Distance and let's talk about the construction and planning.
If you go out there now, there won't be much to impress you except for the size of the place. All you will see is a few big holes, some cleared out areas, several dozen hills, and a 450-acre muddy lake. Sure, now it's the biggest theme park in not just North America, but the whole entire world. But in July of 1969, it was just a whole lot of land that was ready for development. It was to this torn-up landscape, in which the first concrete that would form the Magic Kingdom had just been poured, that Disney invited a tour group full of Florida Press Association reporters, Orlando Sentinel Star interns, and children. The adults, at least the ones responsible for reporting on the construction, seemed at least somewhat interested and excited for what was to come, with almost all 5 of the articles published by the Sentinel Star interns touching upon largely the same points. 1. There was nothing there right then, but if one used one's imagination, quote, that something that is being developed is breathtaking to behold, end quote. 2. Given the success of Disneyland, the Florida project was going to need a lot of places to house guests, such that at least 5 hotels would be built around Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon. 3. The people involved in this project are all really passionate, which is something that remains true to this day, no matter your opinions on other things Disney. That passion and drive is attributed to Walt himself, whose presence is felt even though at this point in time he'd been gone for almost 3 years. 4. Disney really, really, really wanted to push Walt's original vision of Epcot, with one writer going as far as to say that in its then current state as an actual fully realized city, Epcot will become a reality. The kids were mostly just bored, since there was nothing there, especially no rides and no Mickey.
So take this and you just envision this. You've got 5 interns that are sent out to the Walt Disney World property to see this marvel that's going to be opening in October of 1971. And I will give Disney this. They were pretty consistent on that opening date. So here we are in July of 1969. They knew the opening date, October 1st, 1971. And even if you read back a few years, there was one other opening date that just kind of said early 70s. But once they chose October 1st, 1971, they hit that target. They did not vary from that target. That's an aside. But here you got these 5 people going out to this big project, and they get out there, and there's what is in essence a double wide trailer, which is the visitor center for Walt Disney World. And they were handed a brochure, just like anyone visiting that visitor center at the time. A 14-page brochure here.
In full color.
A lot of it is in color. At least the cover of it is in color. We'll put this up right now. And you can see there, you've got the Magic Kingdom that's sitting on the shores of the Seven Seas Lagoon. You've got the Polynesian and the Venetian and the Contemporary and the Asian and the other hotel whose name I forget.
I've never heard of those hotels.
All on the monorail line. You got this cool little like hub design out there, a big castle gleaming in it. And so that's what they're handed. And then they're loaded up on a bus and they're basically taken out into the scrub where none of these things exist. At one point in one of the articles, one of the authors was talking about the fact that the bus driver had to ask a security guard how to get somewhere and the security guard, well, don't go up that way, you'll get lost. So it's like...
The newspaper bosses told the interns, we're going to send you out on a trip. They didn't tell them they might not come back.
Yeah.
What is this, the Jungle Cruise?
So you have to understand that there was nothing there other than the construction site for the kingdom. So they'd cleared off the area for the parking lot. I've got a few aerial shots here that I'll show you. They cleared off, the spot for the parking lot. They'd dug out the Seven Seas Lagoon. It doesn't have water in it yet. It was just dug out, and they were using that dirt to kind of to stack up. And one of the articles makes mention of large hills.
They keep mentioning these hills with these trains on them. Mm-hmm. And I think I asked you one day, I'm like,
yeah,
where the heck are these hills?
Right. So, as you probably know, the Magic Kingdom was built on the second floor, right? So in Florida, you can't dig down that far without hitting water. So all the utilidors that they use at the Magic Kingdom are actually on the first floor. And then they use the excavation from Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon to basically cover that up, make a leveled area, and then built Main Street and everything on top of that. So everything that they're building right now, that these reporters are seeing right now, is all first floor construction. So they're seeing big trenches. And if you think about it, the Walt Disney World Railroad is built on the second floor. And when you come in through Main Street, that's really the third floor. So Walt Disney World basically put a railroad 3 stories up. So these big hills that they're talking about are the berms that they had to build all the way around the Magic Kingdom to keep the train system on at least the second floor, and then slowly grade it up to the third floor so that we can get that, walking in underneath the train station on Main Street, USA. That's the third floor. That train is up on the third floor. Think about that the next time you're there. That train is on the third floor. That's crazy. But that's where these big hills were. So imagine looking at that, just trenches and things. And remember, I told you at the beginning that something very important happened in 1969. The very first concrete was poured on site in 1969. We can narrow it down to a week, but
we can't seem to find the exact
date that this happened. But it was a footer that was poured for Cinderella Castle. That was the very first concrete that was poured. Disney, in their foresight, knew that they would need a ton of concrete. Multiple tons of concrete, but they
just
built
1 ton.
Yeah. So instead of bringing this in from somewhere, they actually built a concrete plant on site, which and Google Maps you can still see the footprint of where the concrete plant was. It's now used for storage and stuff. But there is a concrete plant that they built that produced all the concrete that they needed there. At Walt Disney World. So these guys, I'm babbling on here about them. Do you any favorite things from these 5 interns?
They keep, as the voiceover mentioned, they keep hammering Epcot, the original vision of Epcot.
Yeah. And I think that's actually in the brochure. I think that is part of the visitor center and the brochure is to tell you, that this is just phase one, that what's really going to happen here is this, this city.
This theme park, it's just a phase.
Yeah. And that was just keeping true to Walt's vision. Like Walt did not want to build a copy of Disneyland. That he was against that idea. There were many plots of land in Florida when they were scouring, looking for land that he turned down because it wasn't big enough. It would have been big enough to build another Disneyland, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to do this other thing. He wanted to move on and do this other thing. But sadly, that never happened to his vision. But I often have wondered about this. Would it have been successful? That it was really crazy what he was proposing, right? He was proposing that people would live for free in this city for a period of time if they gave up their, the rights to their house so that it could be controlled by corporations and that they could be guinea pigs. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that
Leave
would
a
work.
comment down below.
Yeah.
Do you think Walt's original vision of Epcot would have lasted any length of time, much less through to today?
Yeah, and what would have happened had Epcot been built in Progress City, and then Walt died? Because Walt was the guy that could get the corporations to come in. He was the visionary. He was the guy with the gift of gab that could go in and convince these people that they wanted to, invest this money and invest this time in this project. And without him, I don't know how successful Epcot would be. I will say this, just as a putting it aside, our foreshadowing, the Epcot that we did end up with had a lot of elements that Walt was very interested in having. It had the World Showcase, which was really the kind of permanent World's Fair kind of a thing that he wanted. So Epcot minus the city is not that far off from what Walt originally envisioned. It just didn't have the living component that they had. But enough of that, because we're back in 1969.
One of the things that I found very interesting was, yes, Epcot was a thing, but they also knew that Magic Kingdom, Walt Disney World, was going to be a tourist destination. It was being designed as a destination property.
Yeah.
And a spokesman for Disney, in his official capacity, referred to Disneyland as a side trip attraction to a bunch of reporters.
Now, in fairness, what they were getting at is that they were going to incorporate the infrastructure needed to make this a place to stay for several days. And they were going to do that by building 5 hotels around the World Showcase, around the Seven Seas Lagoon and Bay Lake. And those hotels were the Contemporary Hotel, the Polynesian Hotel,
the Asian Hotel, the Persian Hotel, and the Venetian Hotel.
That's right. So let me just read you here what the information. Let me just read you what the information brochure says about each of these hotels real quick. The Contemporary, the flagship of the theme resorts in Walt Disney World, is the 750-room Contemporary style hotel. The Walt Disney World all-WEG monorail trains will travel directly through its 80-foot-high open mall lobby, ringed by shops, cafes, and restaurants. Major conventions will headquarter here and use its grand ballroom, exhibit rooms, and meeting rooms. So yeah, that's the Contemporary Hotel that we all know and love today, right? The A-frame hotel, 750 rooms in the central unit, built by a new process called unitized construction. That's really hard to find pictures of, but the concept here is that they built the frame of the hotel and then built the rooms somewhere else on site and then just plugged the rooms in. So they already had the wiring and the plumbing and all those things, so they would do the room somewhere else and plug them in. And as we get further in the construction project, we will show you some of those pictures. But that was a Contemporary. So the Contemporary not really changed all that much. What about the Polynesian?
The Polynesian, according to the brochure, is the place to stay for sports enthusiasts. The Polynesian Theme Hotel. There's a special pool for scuba diving, golf nearby at the Walt Disney World courses, and boating almost at your doorstep. 1/3 of the rooms are planned for the graceful high-rise structure, and all 700 rooms will face the water.
So you may be thinking to yourself, hey, that doesn't really sound like the Polynesian, what graceful high-rise. And as you can see from these pictures here, there was supposed to be a 12-story high-rise Polynesian. That changed at some point.
It's, what, 3 floors? 2 floors?
Yeah, I think the grand hall is maybe 3 floors, and then most of the things are 2-story there. I don't know. We'll find out in a future episode what happened to those plans, but that was some things have obviously changed because I can't go scuba diving at the Polynesian Hotel. And then I know you're thinking to yourself, hey, you said there were 5 hotels. You even named the Asian, Persian, and Venetian hotels. What's that all about?
I would like to stay at one of those hotels. Can I do so?
Sure. Let me tell you about the Asian Hotel here from the brochure. The Asian-style hotel is primarily Thai in its decor and food specialties. 2/3 of its 600 rooms are planned on the water or in garden settings. The remainder will be in a 160-foot high tower building overlooking the lagoon and a central recreation area. All convention facilities will be underneath and separated from the main public areas. Now, I don't know how they're going to do that. Underwater convention centers? You're right on Bay Lake. I don't know how you go under at that point.
I don't know how far ahead they were thinking on this or how well they thought some of these things through, which is probably why they don't exist.
Possibly. What about the Persian Hotel?
Located on the lake, the Persian-style hotel will create the effect of visiting an exotic Far Eastern palace. Oh, casual 1960s racism. Crowning the central lobby will be a colossal dome from which balconies will radiate to the 500 rooms. Accommodations will look out over the lake or onto beautifully landscaped courtyards.
Yeah, so the Persian Hotel is built in a site just past the Contemporary. I should have mentioned that the Asian Hotel was going to be built where the current Grand Floridian sits. So it's like the spot that the Grand Floridian occupies was originally going to be the Asian Hotel. And then the Persian Hotel was going to be a little bit past, so kind of like even past the Contemporary. I think there's like a monorail section, a station back there or something, or their HVAC system, whatever. It was going to be on Bay Lake. So unlike the other hotels, which were on the Seven Seas Lagoon, and the Contemporary kind of straddles the two, this one was going to be on Bay Lake. I don't know whatever happened to that or why it didn't get built.
I'm sure we'll find out in some of these future news articles.
Now, the Venetian Hotel was the one that I would love to have stayed at. Take a listen to this. In the style of St. Mark's Square, the 500-room Venetian-themed resort will be strongly oriented to water activities. It will feature an enclosed small boat harbor entered from the lagoon area and an intricate system of waterways designed to create the atmosphere of Venice. The glass-topped lobby will produce a sunny atrium effects indoors. That sounds awesome. It's like, I like the Venetian Hotel in Vegas because it's got little lagoons and stuff in it, but that sounds awesome. I would love to see a Venetian hotel at Disney. Disney, do this. Build this.
They were going to, and then they didn't.
All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about from these guys right here? By the way, we're going to link this on our website. So we will link some of these articles we'll link all the articles that we're talking about here on our website. Go to www.aristocrafts.com.
So I understand that the press people had children.
Yes.
You're really going to drag your kids out to what is essentially a construction site for a theme park that doesn't exist yet, and then be surprised when they're bored.
Actually, I'll take it one further. Disney invited their children. It's like Disney encouraged, from the article that talked about Potter speaking at the Press Association, it's like these reporters were invited and encouraged to bring their families. So Disney invited the kids to see Scrub. So,
and all the kids wanted to see was Mickey, and he wasn't there.
Yeah. So there you go. Some of the other fun facts that we uncovered here is like they were anticipating Disney to employ 5,000 to 6,000 people. which is currently 74,000 as of 2016. And the other thing, the 40 acres of campsites over in Fort Wilderness. Fort Wilderness didn't open with the park. It actually opened, I think, later in 1971 or early 1972. There we go. Like I said, we'll link all these articles over on our website. Okay, so let's take a look at something outside of Disney, specifically orange juice.
Donald Duck is a fowl of many flavors. In 1943, he starred in his very own anti-Nazi propaganda film, and in 1958, he took to the stage to help present the Oscars. It would then make sense for him to be an advertising aficionado as well, wouldn't it? Disney certainly thought so, licensing him in 1941 to what was then known as the Florida Citrus Canners Cooperative to promote their products, especially orange juice. While we don't know for certain if the Disney connection, especially in the lead up to Walt Disney World's construction and later opening, helped drive traffic to the Lake Wales, Florida plant, in July 1968, the cooperative announced that it was building a hospitality house for its more than 100,000 visitors per season. Estimated to cost $40,000, the hospitality house would contain an updated version of the film Citrus World of Donald Duck that had previously been shown during tours of the plant, which had been canceled due to safety concerns caused by a planned expansion of the facility. Marvin H. Walker, the president of the plant, said at the time that, quote, "The cooperative and the plant aren't trying to get into the tourist business. They're just trying to live with it. We want to be nice to them," referring to guests, "and hope they will remember our products when they return home." This was in stark contrast to his view in March of that year, where he told the Waverly, Florida Citrus Canners Board that tourists had, frankly, become a problem.
Okay, so this kind of like shows the thinking here, right? You had the orange goose, the orange goose. You had the orange juice guy that was basically like, we don't want tourists. These are annoying and they're crazy.
They're a problem.
They're a real problem. It's a safety hazard to have tourists here. And then you had other people that were like, wait. This is good for us, right? This is good for the Florida.
These are the backbone of our economy.
Yeah. Fun fact, in reading, I found out that a new process had just been perfected in 1969 of flash freezing orange juice so that they could provide orange juice concentrate year round, because prior to that, there were too many ice crystals in the frozen concentrate. What are you doing?
What?
You're like posing at your picture there.
I'm looking at you. I did not know this was a thing. This is me finding out about flash freezing.
Okay.
This is a more
great.
moment.
Exactly. Now I have to leave that in. That's great. All right. So no, it is great. Anyway,
no, I'm not sitting here mugging for the camera.
I thought you were just like checking your hair or something. Anyway, so the flash freezing orange juice, they came up with this new process to do it that didn't have ice crystals in it, because prior to this, freezing orange juice produced ice crystals, and that just wasn't a good experience for the consumer. So they had to supplement the oranges out of orange season with Mexican oranges and oranges from California and whatnot. So the Florida citrus growers were like in their heyday here, like, hey, Michael, we got this new process. We can over pick our oranges and like we can flash freeze this stuff, and then we have enough orange juice for all year long that we can produce this. You can see that Disney got involved here. They were licensing the Donald Duck brand, and I seem to recall as a kid Donald Duck orange juice concentrate.
I don't.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, no. But they had this movie that they made for them. You can find it on YouTube. I put a little bit of clips in there, but I'll link that down below that you can go and see the tourist film that Disney made for the Donald Duck plant. But yeah, I just think, go ahead.
Maybe it's because I'm not a Florida native that going to an orange juice factory would be something of interest?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that this was, you're just spoiled. You have theme parks now. We didn't have theme parks, right? They didn't have theme parks back then. This is what people did. Busch Gardens in Tampa, that existed before this. So the Busch Gardens is an established thing at this time in July of 1969. It was basically a brewery tour, a train ride, and some animals, like some gardens and animals, like a bird show, I think is what they had. That's what people did back then. This is the industrial age. This is the beginning of the industrial age. It's like, this is mass production. This is like, oh my God, you produced billions of things of orange juice. I've got to see how this is done. Like, we didn't have the Discovery Channel on TV that shows you all the machines that do that. You went and you saw them. You went and you did them, and it was.
You didn't have David Attenborough narrating everything.
Yeah, you didn't. If I was going to make an analogy of something today that would be equivalent, it would be like, take your kid to work day or something like that. It's like, this is fun for kids to go and see what things are like, right? It gets them out in the world, gets them out seeing things. But this was a big thing in the 50s. Cars were a new thing. Like, the family car was affordable, and so people were driving, and they had the interstate highways system going there. So it's like, yeah, these are roadside attractions. This is what people did. There were no Disney Worlds at the time. There were just roadside attractions.
That was a sad day.
Anyway, I think we've babbled on enough about that. There, I hope that you've enjoyed our little talk here about July of 1969 for Disney in the Distance. I will give you a little teaser for what's coming up next month, which will not be a full month because we're running behind here. But for the August of 1969, let me give you a little teaser.
Drain the lake. Drain the lake.
They're going to drain Bay Lake. They decided that Bay Lake was muddy and unappealing.
I mean, it said as much in one of the articles.
So they're going to drain it. They're just going to take all the water out of Bay Lake, clean it, and then put new water back in. And that's going to happen in August. Well, at least it's going to start to happen in August. And so we're going to talk about this. Also, what's this headline mean? I guess we'll find out. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed Disney in the Distance. Make sure you leave us a comment down below and let us know, what you thought and what you think we can do better. Give us a big thumbs up if you liked it.
And until next time,
see you real soon.